Welcome back. Today we're taking a look at one of these ultrasonic oil diffusers. I have done a video on one of these before in the past where the unit was working initially and then stopped working for the person that owned it. They returned it to my store and we exchanged it for a new one. And I ended up taking the old one back home since I can't really do anything with it, store-wise. So I decided, maybe open it up and see what happened with it. And apparently, I guess they must have emptied the water out of it, and the way they did it caused water to back up inside the unit and cause water damage to the main control circuit. And that's why initially it had worked and then stopped working. This one was returned because it never worked at all. And I actually did a preliminary plug it in the store, tested it out. We actually used one of these there and tested the power supply out just to make sure that wasn't the case. And of course, it still didn't work. So I figured I would try to take this one home and we'll do some troubleshooting on it. Anybody knows anything about troubleshooting, you want to try the simplest thing first, which was to test the power supply out. But now that I'm here in my lab, I will certainly try it again. These things are usually work pretty well. They're not overly complicated. So you can see this has just got a regular, this is just a plain switch mode power supply. It's a 0.6 amp output running at it's a 0.6 amp input with a 24 volt output, 800 milliamps. So obviously the quickest thing to do would be to plug this in and just test it with the multimeter here to make sure we are actually getting the 24 volts out of it. I did try the power supply at work on ours and it didn't come up. Yeah, 23.99. That's pretty damn close to the 24 up. Yep, we just hit 24 exactly. So we know it's not the power supply. And if I plug it in, now there's no water in it, it shouldn't come on. But usually the light lights up for a second and just it shuts off. This does nothing. There isn't even any lights lighting up inside. So we're going to go ahead, open it up, and take a poke to see if it's something simple or something more complicated. And all I gotta do is take these rubber tabs off, take the 4 screws out, and it should come apart in 2 pieces. I'll save you the boredom and I'll be right with you. All right, inside the unit, there's actually nothing that stands out right away to me from just a preliminary gander over to say something's wrong with this thing or not. I'm looking for things like something stupid like, the jack isn't connected to the board, or one of the wires is cut, something like that, and I don't see anything so far that indicates that there's anything wrong with this thing visually. That's always the first test. We have a power input here. There is a piezoelectric disc up at the top here that does the actual diffusion just by vibrating the water. There's also an LED ring here, but of course that wouldn't have anything really to do with the unit not powering up. We have a fan which does not spin up when you apply power to it, but then again it only powers up when you turn the thing on. We also have the power switch, which is not a physical switch in the regard that pushing this doesn't actually turn the unit on. It's one of these soft button switches, so there's signal coming to it that has to go back to the board. So if the board's not powering up, this isn't going to do a lick of difference. It's not like a physical on-off kind of clicky switch. So we have to disassemble this a little further. Take the rest of the screws out of here so we can actually disconnect the connectors. They do have this kind of like rubberized glue on all this stuff here. So we do have to wiggle them out. But then once we get that out, we can start poking around a little bit more. Nothing seems fried on here. I don't see anything shorted out, like a stray, solder joint or anything like that. So I will have to investigate it a little further. So it's not a simple fix, but like I said, usually with troubleshooting, you want to try the simplest thing first. So let me go ahead and break this down a little further, and hopefully we can come across something. Right after about a couple minutes of poking and prodding, I got everything out of the case here, and I started following the power signal from the connector up here at the top, along through the diode and through a couple resistors and a capacitor, And while I had it out here, I said, it'd be kind of funny if I pushed the button and it did something, right? Yeah. So this is what it does when there's no water in the unit. In fact, if I move my hand out of the way, see, now it's not doing anything at all. And before, these two LEDs were lighting up. So there's definitely something shorting out, which seems like it's up here in the connector. So I put my money on this connector having some kind of a loose connection in it for sure. Because you see, now it's not doing anything at all, and depending on where I set this wire. So it's either here in this end, or it's in the other end. But that's what I'm putting my money on right now. Is it a bad solder connection? Is it a loose wire inside the wire sleeving here? Not really sure, but I'm going to do more poking and prod until I find out. Now I'm holding this button in, and you can see by wiggling this, it's having the same effect as it being pushed down and off. So I'm going to go ahead and fire up the soldering iron. I'm going to desolder these wires here, and I'm actually going to eliminate this little connector, and I'm going to hardwire this thing and see if it's this end or the other end. I'll also do a continuity check. Actually, before I do that, I should say, I'll do a continuity check between each of these pins just to make sure it's making contact. And I think that's going to be the problem. You can also see in the back of the board over here, there's a bit of this silver section. This is actually the green coating on the circuit board, like wore away, or some kind of a manufacturing defect. So that's pretty interesting. That could be, shorting out against something, although that's probably improbable since inside the case here it's all plastic, and this just kind of press fit in here with two screws with these, it's kind of like these top hat screws here, I'll call them. They were screwed in here, and that was preventing that board from sliding back out of place. So I don't think that was shorting out anything, but hey, anything's possible. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I could put something on that too to just cover it up. And it appears as if the problem we're having is located here on the connector end of this. The wire is actually not secured in there very well at all. So that's the problem. This whole wiring harness is kind of hokey, but you can see it's definitely loose. So either I eliminate the connector and just hard solder this directly to the board, or well, there really is no other way around it because I don't have any of those pins to re-crimp a new one on. So that's basically what I have to do. I was debating just completely replacing this whole wiring set with just 3 pieces of wire, which I may just go ahead and do. That gives me the most peace of mind. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and undo this whole thing, desolder all this and whatnot, and we'll get this thing to fire up. I just want to show you, now that I got this apart, what I did to identify which hole I need to use, because there's actually only 3 wires being used, although you can see there are 4 holes. I'm using the same color wire on each side, so I wanted to make sure I'm plugging this thing in 1 for 1. So I made 3 different colored marks with 3 different colored markers, obviously, and pointed the marker color to the hole corresponding to where it goes, and you can see I did that on the other side here too. So it'll be a lot easier to match these up. And I have the 3 pieces of wires already stripped and cut, ready to go. So I'm just going to stick them in the hole, solder them one at a time, and when I turn this when I'm done, it should work fine. Now I tested the other harness here, and these wires are actually crimped a lot better, whereas the other one, they were all like really shoddily done. This is actually very thin wire and not the greatest. This is actually very similar to the ribbon cable that they use inside of a computer for like the IDE hard drives and whatnot. And at the factory, they just peel, however many of these that they need to, populate the connector. And neat thing about them is they have different indicators per each wire, so you don't need a color code on them or whatnot. It works. I'm not the biggest fan of this kind of cable, but it does the job, and after all, it's only signal wire. It's nothing high current, like even with this LED ring, it's not like it needs, you know, a heavy duty cable. Whereas this stuff, I think, is 22 gauge. So it is a little thicker, but, you know, it's kind of one of those smoke them if you got them things. This is what I'm working with right now. And I just really would have I'd rather not worked with one of these kinds of wires, since it was so flimsy. But you could see, you know, those little connectors, they just crimp these things on, shove them in here, and then they just take this block and just put it in place and solder it. So that does make it easy for assembly, but, you know, on one end it had that kind of a connector, and the other end it had a actual, you know, jack, or, you know, like a snap fit connector, like a Molex type connector, I guess you could say. So that does make it easier, like, you know, the DC barrel jack here, they just plug in when they're done making it. Whereas, you know, everything I make by hand, and I usually don't use those connectors. But then again, you know, when you do it by hand, it kind of, you know, take more time to do it. If you're going to work on it, you're going to desolder everything anyway. At the end, you know, the connectors are a better way to go, but that's just another little thing you have to buy. A tool to crimp it and whatnot. So, as you can see, it didn't really do that great, this particular job. So, the solder connection wins for me. And there's everything all soldered up. Used my faithful helping hands as always to just give me a hand with this. I'm going to go ahead and plug that power supply back in and push that button, and we get the preliminary fire up, fire down kind of routine, which is a good sign. And holding the button and wiggling this thing around doesn't make it come on, which is what we were hoping for. So I'm going to go ahead, put the rest of this together, fill it up with some water, and hopefully we have a working unit. Okay, got everything put back together, filled it up with water, and I should be able to push this button and it should stay lit. We should see vapor coming out the top. It's good to me so far. And there's the vapor. You could probably not see it on the camera, but it's there, trust me. And the important thing is this light is not going out. Now, I haven't actually figured out how this knows there's water in it, because the only thing that there is the piezoelectric disc. There's no like sensor or contacts, and the only thing I'm thinking is there's a slight maybe short between the positive and negative going to that piezoelectric disc, and the microprocessor in here senses that and detects that there's water in it. That's the only thing I can come up with. I'm actually gonna kill my studio lights here, and we can get a good look at the LED on this. One more. Oh, and of course the camera light. If you haven't used one of these diffusers yet, they're pretty nice. Whoops. They have this kind of LED light show that goes on, which is really nice and gentle. And if you push the button one more time, you can actually shut that off, and it just has this very low backlight. Only thing I could see with this, if I had to change anything about it, I wish the power LED went kind of dim, went at the same time. It doesn't. You know, turn it off one more time, it goes off, and then we can start it back up here again. But it you know, if you have this next to your bed, that blue light actually ends up being quite bright. But the LED light show here is kind of nice. And this uses the 50/50 style LED chips. There's 3 of them in there. So you can imagine that is pretty bright. Unfortunately, like I said, well, yeah, maybe you can see the vapor now. There's just a light stream of it coming out. There's no oil in this right now, but this would, you know, permeate the room with whatever scent you're trying to get out of it. Like I said, we use these at work extensively. They're pretty much powered up all day long, and just provide, you know, a nice scent to the store. Sometimes we use like peppermint or something like that to kind of give you like a little uplifting kind of scent, or use lavender to kind of give you like a more calming kind of scent. Depends on what kind of mood we're in, I guess. I tend to find that we use the peppermint more than anything because that's a really great scent. But anyway, that may be a video, subject for another video one day. But for now, as always, I want to thank you for watching. I've already mentioned in a prior video that I'm getting very close to the 50 subscriber mark, which is halfway to my goal. So if you're already a subscriber, thanks for sticking around. If you're not, I'd appreciate it if you do subscribe. Also, you can check me out over at my Facebook page. I'm going to start mentioning that more in the videos, because I actually have had the Facebook page longer than I've had the YouTube channel. But believe it or not, I actually have more people coming to the YouTube channel every day. So, you know, if you check me out over there, you'll see that I'll have upcoming projects, and you know, there are some exclusive videos that I put up there, kind of just short ones around the shop here, nothing really spectacular. And I'll have all the links to that in the description below. And well, you know, as I always say in all these videos, thanks for watching.